In this video, we're going to look at several strange details and hidden theories from Avatar: The Last Airbender. On the surface, Avatar feels like a hopeful story, a story about friendship, about balance, about saving the world. But when you start looking a little closer at the timeline of events, something strange begins to appear. Some moments in Avatar seem almost too perfectly timed, almost like they weren't accidents. And the most important example of this happens right at the beginning of the story. Katara and Sokka discover a massive iceberg floating in the ocean. Inside the iceberg is a boy named Aang, the Avatar. And according to the story, he has been frozen there for 100 years. Now that detail might not seem strange at first, but think about what it actually means. For an entire century, the Avatar, the one person capable of keeping the world in balance, simply didn't exist. And during that exact same century, the Fire Nation nearly conquered the entire planet. That timing is incredibly convenient. Without the Avatar, there was no one who could master all four elements, no one who could unite the nations, no one powerful enough to stop the Fire Nation's expansion. For the first time in history, the Fire Nation had an opportunity to reshape the world, and they acted on it immediately. Not long after Aang disappeared, Fire Lord Sozin launched one of the most devastating attacks the world had ever seen, the destruction of the air nomads. All four air temples were attacked at the same time: north, south, east, and west. That kind of operation requires enormous planning. Troops had to travel across huge distances, armies had to move simultaneously, and Sozin waited for one very specific moment before launching the attack: the arrival of Sozin's Comet, a rare celestial event that dramatically increases the power of firebending. With the comet in the sky, Fire Nation soldiers suddenly became far more powerful than usual. Entire temples were destroyed in a matter of hours. But there's one detail that often gets overlooked. The Fire Nation didn't just destroy the temples, they searched them. If you look closely at the ruins we see later in the show, pieces of Fire Nation armor are scattered throughout the buildings, which means soldiers spent time exploring the temples after the attack. This wasn't just a military strike, it was a search mission. They were looking for someone, the Avatar, but they never found him, because Aang was already trapped deep in the ocean, frozen inside an iceberg. After the air nomads were wiped out, the Fire Nation turned their attention to the Southern Water Tribe, and the attacks there were strange. The Fire Nation didn't try to conquer the region. They didn't build settlements. Instead, they captured waterbenders, one by one. Every waterbender in the Southern Water Tribe slowly disappeared, until eventually only one remained, Katara. Which means the Fire Nation systematically removed the exact people who could have trained the Avatar in waterbending. If Aang had awakened even a few years earlier, he might not have found any waterbending masters left in the South. And another strange detail appears in the very first episode. Prince Zuko sails directly to the South Pole. He doesn't search multiple continents. He doesn't investigate other nations. He goes straight to the Southern Water Tribe. Which is strange, because his mission is to find someone who vanished 100 years ago. That should be an impossible task. Yet Zuko seems oddly confident about where to start. And that idea might not have come from Zuko himself, because the person traveling with him is General Iroh, one of the most experienced strategists in the Fire Nation. When Aang finally appears, everyone reacts with shock. Zuko panics, the soldiers panic, but Iroh stays calm. He pours himself tea, almost like he expected this moment to happen eventually. And maybe he did, because Iroh understood something the rest of the Fire Nation didn't. The Avatar never disappears forever. Eventually, the Avatar always returns, because once Aang returns, something else begins to happen. Hope spreads. Not immediately, not everywhere, but slowly, people begin to believe again. And that's important, because for almost 100 years, the Fire Nation had something more powerful than its armies: fear. Entire villages believed resistance was impossible. Cities surrendered without fighting. Even the largest kingdom in the world, the Earth Kingdom, was slowly losing territory. But the moment people hear the Avatar has returned, things start to change. Suddenly, rebellions appear, resistance groups form, prisoners escape, and soldiers begin questioning their orders. Which means Aang isn't just a powerful bender, He's something much more dangerous to the Fire Nation, a symbol. And symbols can be more powerful than armies. Because symbols change how people think. They change what people believe is possible. But there's another mystery hidden inside the Avatar world that goes even deeper than the war, and it involves the source of bending itself. Later in the story, we learn something strange about waterbending. Waterbenders don't simply manipulate water. Their abilities are connected to the moon. When the moon rises, their power becomes stronger. When the moon disappears, their power disappears with it. We see this when Admiral Zhao kills the moon spirit. Suddenly, every waterbender in the world loses their bending at the exact same moment, completely. That moment reveals something incredible. Waterbending isn't just influenced by the moon, it is powered by it. And that raises an interesting question. Who created that connection? The answer might lie with the lion turtles, ancient creatures that existed long before the nations, long before the Avatar. According to the lion turtle, humans originally didn't have bending at all. Instead, people lived on the backs of giant lion turtles. Whenever they left the cities to explore the wild world, the lion turtles temporarily granted them bending. Fire, water, earth, air, but only for a short time. Eventually, humans learned how to keep those abilities permanently, and shortly after that, the lion turtles disappeared, which suggests something uncomfortable. Humans may not have been meant to keep bending forever. Another place where strange things happen is the spirit world. Whenever characters enter the spirit world, time behaves differently. Conversations that feel long inside the spirit world sometimes take only seconds in the real world. This means spirits experience time in a completely different way than humans. For a spirit that has existed for thousands of years, human history might feel incredibly short, almost like watching a brief moment. And that idea becomes even more unsettling when we meet one particular spirit, Ko, the Face Stealer. Ko is one of the oldest spirits we see in the series. He steals the faces of anyone who shows emotion in his presence. When Aang meets him, Ko immediately recognizes him as the Avatar. But more importantly, Ko talks about Avatar Kuruk, an avatar who lived centuries before Aang. That means Ko has been observing humans for hundreds of years, possibly thousands, watching, waiting, collecting faces like trophies. Eventually, Team Avatar reaches the enormous city of Ba Sing Se. But something about the city feels wrong. Nobody talks about the war. Not the citizens, not the guards, not even the government. Anyone who mentions the Fire Nation is immediately silenced. And anyone who asks too many questions disappears. Later we discover the truth. The Dai Li, the secret police of Ba Sing Se. They capture people and bring them to Lake Laogai, where something terrifying happens. Brainwashing. Memories are rewritten. Thoughts are replaced. Until the prisoners become loyal citizens again. Even the Earth King himself has no idea the war is happening. Which means the Dai Li weren't protecting the government. They were controlling it. Ba Sing Se wasn't just a city. It was a controlled society. Meanwhile, the Fire Nation was developing something even more powerful than its military. Technology. Factories powered by firebenders, massive warships, eventually even airships. While the other nations relied on traditional weapons, the Fire Nation turned bending into industry. They industrialized their power. And that technological advantage helped them dominate the war for almost a century. But the Fire Nation also destroyed something important about its own culture. Originally, firebending came from dragons. The first firebenders learned their techniques by observing them. The dragons taught them that fire represents life, energy, creation. But over time, the Fire Nation began hunting dragons, killing them for sport. Eventually, people believed dragons were extinct. By destroying the dragons, the Fire Nation erased the original philosophy of their own bending tradition. Fire stopped representing life and became a symbol of destruction instead. Aang carries another tragedy that's easy to overlook. When he wakes up after 100 years, he discovers that his entire culture has vanished. The air nomads are gone. Their temples are ruins. Their traditions are lost. Even their animals are gone. Sky bison once lived in large herds across the air temples, but when Aang returns, Appa might be the only one left. Which means Aang didn't just lose his people, he might have lost an entire species. In the final battle with Fire Lord Ozai, Aang makes a choice that changes everything. Instead of killing Ozai, he removes Ozai's bending using energy bending. For the first time in the entire war, a conflict ends without destroying the enemy. That decision breaks a cycle that had lasted for generations, because in the world of Avatar, conflict seems to follow a pattern. Peace, then imbalance, then war, then the Avatar appears, and the world resets. But the Avatar never prevents the imbalance from happening. The Avatar only appears once the imbalance has already begun, which suggests something strange about the Avatar's true purpose. The Avatar might not exist to stop conflict. The Avatar might exist to limit how far the imbalance spreads, almost like a safety system built into the world. And if that's true, then the Avatar isn't just a hero. The Avatar might be the world's reset button. And maybe the biggest mystery in Avatar isn't why the world fell out of balance. Maybe the real mystery is how it ever stayed balanced in the first place. And once you start thinking about the Avatar as a kind of balancing system, another strange pattern begins to appear. Every nation in the world seems to represent a different philosophy. The air nomads value freedom. The water tribes value adaptability. The Earth Kingdom values stability. And the Fire Nation values ambition. At first, these ideas seem harmless, even admirable. But when one philosophy becomes too dominant, the balance of the world begins to break. And that may be exactly what happened before the 100-Year War. Because Fire Nation culture slowly began to change long before Sozin ever became Fire Lord. Originally, firebending philosophy focused on energy, life, breath, movement. But over time, the Fire Nation started redefining what power meant. Instead of balance, they began valuing domination. Instead of energy, they focused on destruction. This cultural shift may have taken generations, slowly transforming the Fire Nation into a society built around expansion. By the time Sozin came to power, the idea of conquering the world may have already felt inevitable. But Sozin himself may not have started out as a villain. In fact, when we see him as a young man, he seems very different from the ruthless ruler he later becomes. Because Sozin had a close friend, Avatar Roku. The two of them grew up together. They trusted each other. They shared the same dreams of improving the world. But that friendship eventually became the greatest obstacle in Sozin's path. Because when Roku became the Avatar, he gained the power to stop Sozin's ambitions. When Sozin suggested expanding the Fire Nation's influence across the world, Roku refused, and he made it very clear. If Sozin tried to conquer the other nations, the Avatar would stop him. That moment may have planted the first seed of the war. Not immediately, not violently, but quietly. Because Sozin now understood something important. As long as the Avatar lived, global conquest was impossible. And years later, when Roku was dying during a volcanic eruption, Sozin had a choice. He could save his friend, or he could let him die. At first, it seemed like Sozin was trying to help, but eventually, he stopped and watched. Because in that moment, Sozin realized something terrifying. If the Avatar died, the cycle would continue. A new Avatar would eventually be born, but there would be a brief window of time when the world had no Avatar at all, and that window was all Sozin needed. When Roku died, the Avatar spirit moved on. It would soon be reborn as an air nomad, but Sozin didn't know exactly where, so he made a brutal decision. If he destroyed the air nomads entirely, the new Avatar would die with them, and that is exactly what he attempted. The air nomad genocide wasn't simply an act of revenge. It was an attempt to break the Avatar cycle forever. But the plan failed, because Aang had already run away from the temple. And that moment, Aang running away, may be one of the most important decisions in the entire story. If Aang had stayed, he likely would have died with the other air nomads. The Avatar cycle might have been broken. The Fire Nation might have conquered the world completely. Instead, Aang was caught in a storm. His fear triggered the Avatar state, and that power froze him inside the iceberg, preserving his life for 100 years. Which brings us back to the beginning of the story, because the iceberg itself raises another mystery. Icebergs don't stay in one place. Ocean currents move them across huge distances. Over the course of a century, that iceberg should have drifted thousands of miles, but somehow it ended up near the Southern Water Tribe, the exact location where someone capable of freeing Aang happened to live. Katara, the last waterbender in the South. That coincidence is almost impossibly precise, unless it wasn't a coincidence. Throughout the series, we see spirits intervene in small but important ways. The ocean spirit saves the Northern Water Tribe. Avatar Roku guides Aang during critical moments. The lion turtle appears when Aang needs a solution to defeat Ozai. These interventions are never dramatic enough to completely change history, but they gently guide events, almost like subtle corrections, which suggests something fascinating. The spirit world might be quietly influencing the balance of the human world, not controlling it completely, but nudging it when things drift too far in one direction. That idea becomes even more interesting when we look at Wan Shi Tong, the spirit who guards the great library in the desert. Wan Shi Tong claims to collect knowledge, but when humans begin using that knowledge for war, he becomes furious and sinks the entire library beneath the sand. This reaction suggests that some spirits see humanity as dangerous, not evil, but unpredictable. Humans use knowledge, power, and bending in ways spirits may not fully trust. And that distrust might explain why the spirits created the Avatar in the first place. Because the Avatar isn't just a bridge between worlds. The Avatar is a mediator. Someone capable of understanding both spirits and humans. Someone who can maintain peace between two very different realities. But even the Avatar has limits. Aang spends most of the series struggling with one central problem. He doesn't want to kill. As an air nomad, he was raised to value life above everything else. But every other Avatar seems to believe that killing Ozai is necessary. Even Avatar Roku, even Avatar Kyoshi. Each of them tells Aang the same thing. Sometimes balance requires difficult decisions. But Aang refuses to accept that answer. And that refusal leads him to discover energy bending, a power older than the Avatar itself. With it, Aang finds a third solution. Instead of killing Ozai, he removes Ozai's bending permanently. That decision may represent the most important moment in the Avatar cycle, because for the first time, an Avatar resolves a global conflict without killing the enemy. Which means the Avatar cycle may have evolved. Instead of simply resetting the world through force, the Avatar may now be capable of redefining balance itself. But even with Ozai defeated, the world of Avatar remains fragile. The war lasted 100 years. Entire cultures were erased. Cities were destroyed. Generations grew up knowing nothing but conflict. Rebuilding that world will take decades, maybe centuries. And eventually, the balance will shift again. Because that seems to be the natural rhythm of the Avatar universe. Peace, then imbalance, then conflict. Then the Avatar appears and restores balance once more. Which leaves us with one final question. If the Avatar always restores balance, why does imbalance keep returning? Maybe the answer is simple. Balance isn't something that lasts forever. It's something the world must constantly rediscover, again and again and again. And that might be the true role of the Avatar. Not to create a perfect world, but to make sure the world never falls too far out of balance. Not to create a perfect world, but to make sure the world never falls too far out of balance. And that idea changes how we might understand the entire story. Because the world of Avatar was never meant to be peaceful forever. Instead, it seems to function more like a living system, a system constantly shifting between stability and instability. Whenever one nation grows too powerful, whenever one idea becomes too dominant, the balance begins to break. And eventually, the world corrects itself. Sometimes through diplomacy, sometimes through rebellion, and sometimes through the Avatar. This pattern appears again and again throughout history in the Avatar world. The rise of the Fire Nation, the fall of the Air Nomads, the corruption of Ba Sing Se. Each crisis builds slowly over time, then suddenly reaches a breaking point. At that moment, the Avatar appears and restores equilibrium. But equilibrium doesn't last forever, because the same forces that created imbalance in the first place never truly disappear. Ambition, fear, competition, the desire for power, those forces exist in every nation, and they exist in every generation, which means imbalance will eventually return. Another leader will rise, another conflict will begin, and eventually, another Avatar will be needed. That cycle might sound pessimistic at first, but it may actually reveal something hopeful about the world of Avatar. Because even though imbalance keeps appearing, balance always returns. It may take years, sometimes decades, but eventually the world corrects itself. The Avatar is simply the catalyst that allows that correction to happen faster. And in Aang's case, something important changed. Previous Avatars believed balance required force. Violence was often seen as unavoidable. But Aang refused to accept that idea. His decision to spare Ozai showed that balance could be restored in a different way, without repeating the same destructive cycle. That moment may represent the beginning of a new phase in the Avatar cycle, a phase where balance isn't maintained through domination, but through understanding. And if that idea spreads through the nations, then the world Aang helped create might slowly become more stable than the one he woke up in. Still, the story leaves us with one final mystery. Because the Avatar world existed for thousands of years before Aang was born, Avatars lived, solved crises, then disappeared. Yet the cycle continued, which raises a strange possibility. Maybe the Avatar isn't the solution to imbalance. Maybe the Avatar is part of the system that keeps the cycle going. A force designed to prevent the world from collapsing completely, but never powerful enough to end conflict forever. If that's true, then the Avatar serves a very specific purpose. Not to create a perfect world, but to maintain a world that can survive. A world where no single nation becomes unstoppable. A world where no philosophy dominates forever. A world where change is always possible. Because without change, balance would never need to exist in the first place. And perhaps that's the deepest idea hidden inside the story of Avatar. Balance isn't the absence of conflict. Balance is the ability of a world to recover from it, to adapt, to rebuild, to begin again. And in that sense, the Avatar isn't just a hero. The Avatar is a reminder. A reminder that even when the world falls out of balance, it can still find its way back. Again, and again, and again. Which might be the most powerful mystery of Avatar. Not that the world lost its balance, but that it keeps finding it again, every time. But even with the Avatar restoring balance, the world that Aang wakes up to is very different from the one he left behind. Entire cultures have changed. The Fire Nation has spent a century building colonies across the Earth Kingdom. Cities have grown around those colonies. Families from different nations have lived together for generations. Which means the war didn't just reshape borders, it reshaped identity. For many people living in those colonies, the idea of returning to the old world is complicated. Because the old world no longer exists. Children born in those colonies have never known the Earth Kingdom without the Fire Nation. They've grown up with mixed traditions, mixed cultures, mixed loyalties. Which means the end of the war isn't simply a moment of victory, it's the beginning of an enormous rebuilding process. And that rebuilding may take longer than the war itself. The world now has to figure out how to live together again, how to rebuild trust between nations that spent a century fighting each other, how to repair cultures that were nearly erased, and perhaps most importantly, how to prevent the next imbalance from happening. Because the forces that created the war haven't disappeared. Ambition still exists. Fear still exists. Leaders will still make dangerous decisions. Even after Ozai is defeated, the Fire Nation still possesses the most advanced military technology in the world. Airships, factories, industrial infrastructure. Those tools don't vanish when the war ends. They remain part of the world, which means the balance of power will always remain fragile. But there is one difference now. The world has seen what happens when power grows unchecked. It has seen what happens when one nation believes it has the right to reshape the world. And that memory may become one of the most important lessons in Avatar history. Because the greatest defense against imbalance might not be the Avatar. It might be awareness. The knowledge that the world can fall out of balance. and the understanding that everyone shares responsibility for protecting it. In that sense, Aang's journey isn't just about defeating a single enemy.
It's about changing how the world thinks about power.
About proving that strength doesn't always come from domination. Sometimes, strength comes from restraint, from refusing to repeat the same destructive patterns. That idea becomes especially powerful when we remember who Aang is. He isn't a warrior, he isn't a conqueror, he's a monk, a 12-year-old airbender raised to believe that every life matters. And somehow, that philosophy survives in a world that spent 100 years forgetting it, which might be the most remarkable part of the entire story. The world changed, nations changed, cultures changed, but Aang never abandoned the values he was raised with, even when everyone around him believed violence was unavoidable, even when past avatars told him that killing Ozai was necessary. Aang still found another way. And that moment may represent something larger than the end of the war. It may represent the beginning of a different kind of balance. A balance where compassion becomes as powerful as strength, where understanding becomes as important as victory. And if that philosophy spreads through the world, then the cycle of conflict may begin to change. Not disappear completely, but evolve. Because conflict may always exist in some form. Different nations will always have different goals. Different leaders will always have different ideas about the future. But if the world learns from the past, those conflicts may no longer grow into century-long wars. Instead, they may remain smaller, shorter, more manageable. And the Avatar will still exist, still watching over the balance between nations, still acting as a bridge between humans and spirits. But perhaps the Avatar's role will slowly become less about ending wars and more about preventing them from growing out of control. In that way, Aang's story might represent the beginning of a new era, an era where balance is maintained not just by one powerful individual, but by the choices of everyone living in the world. Because the real strength of balance doesn't come from one hero. It comes from millions of small decisions made by ordinary people. Decisions to cooperate, to rebuild, to forgive, and to remember the lessons of the past. Which brings us back to the central idea of Avatar. Balance isn't a destination, it's a process. Something the world must constantly work toward. Something that can never be taken for granted. And perhaps that is why the Avatar cycle continues. Not because the world will always fall into chaos, but because the world will always need someone to remind it what balance means. Someone who can see the bigger picture. Someone who can stand between opposing forces and prevent them from destroying each other. Someone who can remind the world that every element has its place. Fire, water, earth, air. Each one powerful on its own, but only truly stable when they exist together. And that idea might be the true message hidden inside the story. That balance doesn't come from eliminating differences. It comes from learning how those differences fit together. Which means the Avatar isn't simply the world's protector. The Avatar is the world's reminder. A reminder that even when the world drifts toward chaos, balance can always be found again. And maybe that's why the Avatar continues to return, generation after generation. Not because the world keeps failing, but because the world keeps trying to rebuild, trying to improve, trying to learn from its past mistakes. And as long as that effort continues, balance will never truly disappear. It will simply wait until the world is ready to find it again.